Hello and welcome. My name is Maya Hollenshed, and I am the branch manager here at the historic John L. Dart Library. Today, I am very happy to welcome Ms. Rhonda McKnight, author of The Thing About Home and Bitter and Sweet. Rhonda McKnight is the author of 28 books. Bitter and Sweet is her latest release. She has also written several award-winning bestsellers, including An Inconvenient Friend. She is the winner of the 2015 Emma Award for Inspirational Romance of the Year for her title, Unbreak My Heart.
You're going to try to
Unbreak My Heart. She has been nominated 3 times for the African American Literary Award.
4 times.
4, okay.
Like the Susan Lucci of the award at this point.
You have almost 20 more before you get to the Susan Lucci part.
Yeah. I hope it doesn't take that long.
Yeah. She writes inspirational book club fiction and Christian romance stories about complex characters in crisis. Her goal is to touch the heart of women with the themes of faith, forgiveness, and hope. Originally from a small coastal town in New Jersey, she writes from the comfort of her South Carolina home. Give it up for Miss Rhonda McKnight.
Sounds weird hearing your bio read.
Very
Yes,
weird. Yes. So do you want to read a little excerpt from Bitter and Sweet?
I can. I'll start while I'm getting there. I'll tell you what Bitter and Sweet is about. It is the story of estranged sisters, Mariah and Sabrina. And they are both these sisters at a crossroad in their life. And when they receive sort of a cryptic text message from their grandmother telling them to come home. When they arrive, they think that their grandfather, who has been ill, perhaps is more sick, and that, the circumstances at their grandparents' home is not good. But when they arrive, they discover that their grandmother wants them to reopen the family restaurant that's been in the family for 87 years, has been closed since the grandfather's illness. But these 2 sisters don't have a relationship, so there's a lot going on in the kitchen that has nothing to do with cooking. And the historical story, it's written in dual timeline, is of their great-great-grandmother Tabitha Cooper as she is navigating her life in Charleston, trying to build a restaurant as a single mother during the years of 1915 and 1938. So that's the longer synopsis. And I have a really short one that I could have said, but I'm wordy. So, as you can tell by this big book. So, I'll go ahead and jump into, I think I'm just going to jump into the prologue. Why not? Read the prologue. I haven't read that in a while. And so our prologue begins in Georgetown, South Carolina, present day. Grandma Gail Cooper Holland. My expectations were too high. That's what I've been telling myself as I exited the hospital. It repeated in my mind as I started the car and pulled out of the parking lot. The sun had been swallowed by the dark of dust by the time I parked behind the restaurant. I reached for my purse and stepped from the car. The keys jangled in my free hand as I walked to the back door. I inserted them, releasing the locks one at a time, and then pushed the noisy door open. Lingering citrus from the oil cleanser I'd used on the floor rose to my nostrils. I was impressed that the scent was still so strong. It had been a week since I mopped. Maybe it was always strong. But this place wasn't always so empty. Usually the tiny kitchen was in use. The smells of spices and coconut and sounds of searing meat and pots of seafood gumbo rolling to a boil always met me at the door. That is, unless I arrived before the cooking began. And that was rare. I was never here alone. I never considered I'd have to be here alone. I looked at the tables, their chairs atop them. The glass door to the bakery case glistened with a haunting emptiness. I stepped to my left and walked into the kitchen. It was small, much too small, I always thought, for all that we'd done here. But today it felt huge, like it was swallowing the nothingness that had erected itself and rested in every corner. Nothing had been cooked here in weeks. Nothing had been served to the community who depended on us for almost 90 years. We would reach 90. Forever was the goal, but we could not end at 87. It was too odd of a number. It came up short. 87 was unfinished. I walked to the wall across the room. I called it the Wall of History because it included pictures all the way back to 1937 when my grandmother opened this place. There were pictures of every cook, every celebrity and politician who ever visited, our family and friends. This wall contained lifeblood. A lot was shed to open this place, and even more was shed to keep it. My eyes roamed the many framed award certificates and settled on one in particular, a presentation from the mayor of Georgetown. I was proudest of this one. Etched in gold script, it read, Gail and Odell Holland for Restaurant of the Year. We had rivaled fancier establishments and shined. I reached into my purse for my phone and placed a call to my granddaughter, Mariah. Her voicemail encouraged me to leave a message. Coincidence? A reprieve? Maybe I wasn't supposed to ask. I pushed that thought away. Ask I would, because it was the season for shocking statements and questions. I knew that well. 3 weeks ago, the doctor had let my husband's condition slip from his mouth as easily as raw oysters slipped from the shell. Your husband has had a massive stroke. He will need full-time care. A skilled nursing facility is your best option. The doctor's report stabbed me, wounded me, in a way I was wholly unprepared for and destroyed by. And then Odell's words, Gail, keep Una promise. A tear slid over my cheek as I fell back against the wall. I was tired. My 69-year-old body was exhausted. It was time for the younger ones to relieve us in the same way I relieved my mother. I went to my contacts again. This time I called my other granddaughter, Sabrina. I got her voicemail too. She didn't listen to voicemail. None of these young people did. So I sent a text to both of them with the simple message, I need you to come home. So there begins the story. And it's the only chapter in the book that is actually in Gail Holland Cooper's, the grandmother's point of view. She's a very important character throughout the story, but I felt it necessary to begin the story with her voice and her passion for the restaurant and her sort of the desperation that she felt at that moment in that empty space. So here we go.
Are these two books linked besides the?
No, not at all. So what, what's funny is they originally were going to be. This book originally was, so many people ask me that because I think that they thought, naturally, there's so many blacks, surely you're going to write another story, right? So it originally was going to be, and I made a sort of an artistic and business decision not to link them. The only thing the thing that's most that connects them is the fact that I am writing stories that are set in the South Carolina Low Country.
Okay.
And so both stories are in Georgetown. This one actually, the historical story, about 50% of it is written in Charleston. And I just like, there's so many cities, so I'll just be bopping up and down the coast here.
Because I thought the uncle and aunt in this one were the grandparents in that one.
Yeah. That was the original plan, but it changed.
Okay, all right, Siv. I asked to also answer that question for another team member who was actually off today because we both read it. I'm like, Sherelle, I think these books are linked. It's just like, she's like, yeah, I can kind of see that. So Sherelle, I asked the question. So, but since last year's event at Dorchester Road, which you'll be at today at 6 o'clock,
6 p.m.
a lot has happened. Tell me about it.
Happened, right?
Yeah.
So the thing about home, I'm so grateful. It really was really a story that was just my heart. I came up with the idea during 2020, the summer of 2020, which was a hard summer for all of us. It was dealing with the pandemic. I was outside gardening, which I was not a pandemic gardener. I had been gardening before, I just need to say that. And so I was outside gardening and really just had moved to South Carolina just before COVID. And I moved to South Carolina by accident. I was supposed to be here for an extended visit. And so when the pandemic happened, I stayed because I felt like my parents needed me, and now they've gotten a little older, so they continue to need me, so I'm here. But, which was one of the best decisions that I could have made, because now I've just fallen in love with South Carolina in a way I don't think I ever loved Georgia, even though I lived there for 20 years. And some of that could have to do with my ancestral ties being here. You know, you sort of feel that. And so, but what happened is during that summer, you know, George Floyd had been murdered, the video, there were politics, it was just an awful summer. And I remember thinking, you know, I just want to write a book. I wanted to write a book that would have more of a lasting legacy than the romances I was writing. Even though people were loving them and they were certainly paying the bills, I wanted to write a more important book, something that people would think about for longer than like 5 minutes after they finished reading it. And then I also wanted to write a story that I felt would just be a warm hug and a kiss for women who were really struggling, you know. And so, so that happened. When it came out in 2023, I never expected so many people to mirror my heart for the story. So many people to say, this book felt like a warm hug. Like literally that is what people say all the time. Somebody said it today on Instagram. And so what I wanted to happen happened. I was nervous about it because I had been writing romance, and here I was with my first sort of women's fiction novel, and afraid that my readers would not join me in my new venture and the whole thing, and just being back into a traditional publishing book deal because I had not been traditionally published since 2012. I had been indie publishing my books, releasing them when I wanted to, had all this freedom. And so now I was in a contract with one of the biggest publishers in the world, and so it was just very intimidating. And I thought, what if people hate it? Like, what if this was a mistake? And it immediately was not a mistake. I, you know, had a few social media influencers who had videos that went viral. I was invited to the Essence Festival of Culture in New Orleans, and which was a huge deal last year because typically with Essence, if you had enough money, you could buy a space for an author. You know, you just paid, and publishers paid a lot to get you there. But that last year they curated the authors. You couldn't buy a space, you had to be chosen. And this book was chosen. And so it just made it like 10 times more special that I was at Essence. And so I've gotten to travel. I've just had like the number of reviews and the feedback and people writing me. And recently, a couple of weeks ago, I went to ALA. I went to the American Library Association conference, which was another dream that I didn't even know to dream that I could do, and was actually spoke. I was chosen as a speaker, and I spoke about complex characters in women's fiction. So when you say a lot, like a lot, like things that, you know, it literally started with Essence, and it's been one thing after another. And, you know, I had an opportunity to go meet the Go On Girls, which is one of the biggest book clubs in the country, here in Charleston, for, like a month ago. So like, just like so much stuff has happened. It's been beautiful.
Yeah, so like, I was excited for you when you got into Essence, though. I was like, oh, look at Rhonda and Vanessa in Essence! Yes! So, yes. So let's talk about the first book, which is The Thing About Home. Is about Casey, our model and social media influencer, who runs to Georgetown after finding out about her roots, but learns so much more.
So much more.
But yeah, and then Casey only had a relationship. She learned so much more, and then she finds more familial ties because the only one she had was her cousin and her. I purposely say momager. Her and Kris Jenner could have given each other a run for their money.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So Casey was, you know, I love Casey's story because I think that, you know, sometimes I have people who respond to me like, oh, I don't know if I want to read about a social media influencer. And so my question is always, but is that who she is? What we do is not always who we are. And sometimes I think this is a story of a woman discovering who she really is in so many ways. It begins with her having renewing her vows to her husband of 7 years in this very public way. You know, she's been hashtagging it and sharing pictures of everything about picking the dress and picking this and picking that for 7 months. And literally minutes before they're supposed to walk down the aisle, he tells her that he doesn't want to live this public life with her anymore, and he does not do the wedding. And so Casey handles it much in the way that she's been handling her life for years. Publicly, she makes a video and it doesn't go well. And by the end of the night, she's a hashtag. And so needing to escape her life, she decides that it's time for her to travel south. She's never known anything about her father's family. He died before she was born. And she comes to Georgetown, and what she doesn't expect to find is a 99-year-old grandmother on a 300-acre vegetable farm. Mm-hmm. And so that story was sort of inspired from my love for farms and gardens and grandmas and, you know, just Southern food. It's a foodie book. It's mm-hmm. You know, we got a handsome farm manager. We've, you know, got all the things, but also there are letters that go back from the years 1860, not letters, journals from 1867 to 1902, where she is introduced to her ancestors and her history. And so not only does she learn about her dad and her family in the present, she goes all the way back and gets this lesson in who her people were, how they acquired the land, and figures out who she really is in this world, and that she stands on the shoulders of some very strong, powerful women who made a lot of sacrifices for her. So there's no reason for her to compromise when they already did the compromising. Mm-hmm. Very much so. I think that's the story of all of us, you know. So yeah, that's the thing about home.
Yeah, so like you said, we mentioned before that she finds like new family and develops a close relationship with her grandmother.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so, and you also mentioned about the diaries of her great-grandmother.
Right.
What do you think Casey got out of those?
What she got out of those was, aside from the history, she got an understanding of, first of all that her family had to go through because it begins in 1867. So during the years of freedom, the challenges that they had. Her great-grandmother wanted to be an educator, and the different challenges she had, becoming a teacher, gains and losses, how people felt about being in the South and maybe wanting to go north. That was a goal of her grandmother's, but it was a dream that never happened. And I think that largely one of the things that I wanted Casey to learn from the past was that she had agency, and that even in the difficult things that her grandmother dealt with, there was always love. Mm-hmm. There was always family. There were celebrations. And that even though she never got to do some of the things she wanted to do, she still had agency over her life. She was making decisions and choices. And so Casey here in the present, with so much at her, so many opportunities that she could take advantage of, being paralyzed should not have been a thing. Right. Okay, reading those journals, I think, gave her a sense that she should always be doing more and could do more, and that she shouldn't feel trapped in her life, mm-hmm. because there were people who were trapped in their lives before her. And so there was a lot that she learned, mm-hmm. History, mm-hmm. I shared, some of it is based on some of my own family history, how my family acquired land. It became a thing that I wanted to know that I never cared about when I was younger. Mm-hmm. And, even how the family acquired the land, the steps that they had to take, there were so many themes in the thing about home, but most of it was about family and resilience and love and Southern culture in some very beautiful ways. And I got to share a lot of some very complex political history in South Carolina that all of my readers, even some teachers that are in South Carolina, tell me I never knew that, Mm-hmm. And so I enjoyed the research. I enjoyed writing the book, and it was I write very much a summer read. So, in an interior story about characters, I want people to escape into warm, comforting places. There are a lot of books that deal with the history that can be very hard and, more traumatic. I read those books. I enjoy them. They have their place. That's not what I write. So if you're looking for something breezy, I got you. For the most part, I tell people. But yeah, so there was a lot gained through those journals.
Okay. And you talked about the handsome farm manager.
Child,
Nigel.
Yeah. Hold over from my romance writing, honey. I'm all right.
How does he impact Casey's life?
Nigel was one of my favorite characters to write. Just a really, emotionally intelligent man who loved his work, who loved Georgetown, who loved the soil, who, but also was perhaps looking for something else. He was divorced. He's a divorced dad of single dad who has custody of his daughter, and was very, very close to her grandmother, like a son. And I won't say why he was like a son. There's some people that are lost along the way in this story. She's 99. She's lost a lot of people along the way. Mm-hmm. And so Nigel was like a son to her. And so, but he very integral in the story in terms of sort of being a friend to Casey. Mm-hmm. When she was not a person that had a lot of experience with men because she grew up as a child, as a model from the time she was 2. Her mother was very much a momager, controlled her career, controlled her love life until she couldn't, and when she married Drew. And so her husband was really one of very few men that she had experience with. And so meeting Nigel and having a man as a friend was very important to her. I think it sort of shaped her mm-hmm. thoughts around the possibility of what a man could be. Mm-hmm. Because she didn't have her dad. He died before she was born.
Yeah. So, okay. So we're going to go on to the new book.
The new book.
Bitter and Sweet. We talked about that was about Sabrina and Mariah, who are called to Georgetown to help their grandparents with their restaurant tabbies.
Yes.
And already asked that question, was about the new timelines, and we find both of the sisters kind of struggling with similar but different things.
Yeah. Sabrina and Mariah have been estranged really from birth for some really complicated and painful reasons. They've never been close, and so by the time they get into their very early 20s, something happens that further separates them in terms of their relationship. Mariah, the book opens, and Mariah is, and this is back cover stuff, she is in a place, she's stuck. And actually, both of them are stuck. But Mariah is going through a divorce, and not only did the end of her marriage bring the end of a relationship, but it also cost her business. She was very involved in her husband's family business. She had saved it from bankruptcy and turned it into a regional brand. And literally she's got a meat cleaver in her back because now she's out of the house, out of the diner, and she doesn't really know what's next for her. And she's not handling it well. Sabrina, on the other end, is my homeless single mom living in her van, baking cakes and trying to get that business started. Both these girls are in the upstate. Sabrina is in Greenville, and she is trying to get her business going, and she is also sort of stuck in grief. Her daughter's father was killed in an accident, and she also is struggling with how to move forward, and has a very complicated relationship with the child's paternal grandmother. So coming home to Georgetown is something that needed to happen for them. I think that one of the things that Grandma Gail, in addition to needing their help with the business and knowing where both of them are in their lives, like neither one of y'all don't have much going on up there. Y'all, this is the time. Sometimes it's the right time. And so calling them home and knowing that it was certainly the right time for Mariah, and that she could bring Sabrina also, and that it was just time for her to do the grandma thing and try to see if she can get the relationship between these girls back together. Now, that's not something she ever said that she was doing, but as one reads the book, you clearly can see that Grandma's very concerned about the fact that they don't have this relationship. And so, and they're very different. You know, Sabrina's our sweet, she makes these cakes, they call it sweet cakes. She's our sweet little younger baby sister who's sort of artsy and, you know, just living life by the seat of her pants. And Mariah is the exact opposite, very business focused, has a really strong personality, is real good at saying what she say and what she mean in ways that aren't always as gentle as she could perhaps try to be. And she is, you know, like a knife in the kitchen with her sister, you know, and so the relationship, like I said, between them is very complex. Sabrina wants it to be better, and Mariah really doesn't think she has a need for her baby sister, never has, and resents her for a lot of reasons that you find out in the book that have absolutely nothing to do with Sabrina. It's actually a part of a family trauma that she is not healed from. So, but it's a book about healing, and they both find it in different ways. Actually, there are 3 stories, actually Tabitha too. So we've got 3 women finding themselves and healing in 3 very different ways. With respect to one of the characters, there's actually therapy on the page, which was really important for this story. So yeah, that's Mariah and Sabrina.
Okay. And you mentioned their great-grandmother Tabitha, and her story, a lot of it happens here in Charleston.
Yes.
How does Tabitha's story to relate to the struggles that the sisters face? There was one scene where Tabitha is alone and has to ask for help, if you know. Yeah, that one did not make me happy at all.
I didn't know you were thinking about that.
Yeah.
So, I think that their stories, you know, what I love about this book, and I don't know that it was really as intentional as I set out writing it. I don't think that I've thought about this as a theme or it just was a thing that happened, is that a lot of the issues that Tabitha was dealing with in the past are the same issues that the sisters are dealing with in the present. And I think that is a theme in the book. And also, you know, it's kind of like new day, same devil, you know. And also a lot of the issues that we deal with as women are the same issues that women dealt with in the past. And how many of us know that if you don't deal with issues in your family, that the past will repeat itself. History will repeat itself. And so that is a very prevalent theme as you see their lives sort of mirroring each other, and me not even really setting up to do that, and it just naturally, organically happening in the story.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, and it was also, you had Tabitha, even though despite that she was able to build herself up. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I love historical fiction, and writing in Dual Timeline happened accidentally for me. I sold The Thing About Home as a contemporary novel to my publisher, and I was writing these journal entries, and they were coming up very flat, and I was just failing at them and feeling like, oh my gosh, why do I have this book contract type of thing. And I went to sleep one night very frustrated with the writing, and woke up at 2 a.m. and just wrote this chapter that was set in 1867. I saw a woman with blood on her hands by a river, and I thought, what is this? And so I wrote the chapter, and I thought, oh, okay, this is kind of interesting, and went back to bed. And the next day it happened again, and I thought, well, this is cool, but I don't write historical fiction, so I cannot have historical chapters in my book. And so then it happened again, and I called my editor and I said, look, this thing is happening, and I'm not sure if I'm doing it right, but I like it, and is it gonna be okay? And she was like, I want the story that comes out of you, like do whatever, and we'll make it work. And so, so when I wrote this book in Dual Timeline, it was only about 20% of the thing about home was written in the past. When it came time for this one, I'm like at 50%, and so I'm like, oh, okay, it's the historical voice taking over. But I love historical fiction, but a lot of people who write historical fiction, not all, but write stories about real people and recount their lives. And I've had people tell me now that after the thing about home, my actual mentor, who is, you may know her, Victoria Christopher Murray. She was one of the authors on The Personal Librarian, which was this huge book. Victoria has been my mentor since 2008. And so when she read The Thing About Home a few months before it came out, she says, well, you have a strong historical voice. You're going to be writing historical fiction now, don't you? And I said, no, I'm not going to be writing historical fiction. And so something that she has talked to me about a couple of times is finding a character in history and writing a book about them, because obviously her books are doing really well with these real characters in history. But I feel like I want to, as much as I love reading about real people and their journeys, and I think that they're important, I think it's also important to write stories about everyday people. If everyday people aren't chronicled in history, they disappear if they're not in literature. Every summer we would come south, because that's what you do. You come south, 4th of July weekend, the whole thing with my family for a family gathering. And I always saw this sign for Black River, like as we passed. And so when I came to South Carolina in 2020, well, I came in 2019, but in 2020, I thought, I want to know where this river, because my family's land is on, it backs up to Black River. Where does this river go? So I looked it up on the map, and I decided one day I was just going to follow it. And I got on the road, and I drove all the way down, and it emptied out. I realized it emptied out into Winyah Bay in Georgetown. And when I got out of my car and walked to the boardwalk and stood there, it was the most beautiful day I had experienced in a long time. And I really had sort of a spiritual experience standing there. I felt like as I looked across the ocean, that it was such a clear, beautiful day that I almost imagined that I could see the continent of Africa and what it must have been like, because I knew a lot about Georgetown's history, rice, that rice was cultivated in Georgetown, all up and down the coast, but Georgetown was a big producer, and it was, there was a lot of Southern money was generated from rice. And so you don't realize that because a lot of times our history isn't shared. And when you see movies about the enslaved, they're on cotton or tobacco fields. And there's a reason for that. You don't want to film, nobody wants to film a movie in rice because it's water, it costs more money. And so it's largely been overlooked in film. But by the time I finished doing the research, I was like, Carolina Gold was really Carolina Gold. And so I felt like that it was just really a spiritual experience, and I felt very much that I wanted the family to be on the river, on Black River. And as you know, there's a reason that even their names are tied to the river. And so I just sort of fell in love with Georgetown, fell in love with the river, fell in love with that area, and very much knew that the story had to be set there, even though originally I think that I had intentions on a river in Beaufort, and I can't even remember which one it was, but I'm so happy that I chose Black River. So I do have some family there, not that I'm really close to, but I've been able to trace some of our roots from that area. And so for this particular book, it just felt like I wasn't finished with Georgetown. But my next book, I think, is I'm moving over to Beaufort, and there's some reasons for that as well. So
the thing that struck me about, the reason I asked is when I read both of those books, it struck me that she must live here.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in Georgetown, boots on the ground. I love doing the research. You know, it's so funny. I have a friend, Vanessa Riley, writes historical fiction, and she went to France actually to do research for her book, The Queen of Exiles. And it was so funny because I was writing the thing about home, and I was so busy with the writing that I needed to take another trip to Georgetown. There was something I needed to see. And she's sending us all these pictures in France, and I'm like, girl, you're in France researching. I need to get on the highway and go down to 521, and I won't do it, you know. And so, but I spent a lot of time in Georgetown doing the research and driving the roads and looking at things. And I like to, same thing with Charleston with Bitter and Sweet. And I spent a lot of time doing research of the Avery Research Center, which is wonderful. And I feel like for me, I have to sort of immerse myself in a place if the setting is going to be really important. And the setting of these books is very, very important. So I spent a lot of time in Georgetown, talking to people, picking up food, doing different things, you know. I don't know about you, but I've had women in my family that kept our families alive because they knew how to cook, you know? And so there are women today who operate businesses, whether it's in a restaurant or out of their home, that pay their bills because they know how to cook, or they know how to sew, or they know how to do whatever it is they know how to do. And those women have a voice and they have a story, and their stories need to be told. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them, you know. So, you know, keeping our families alive and doing what they knew how to do, whatever the gift was that God gave them. So I like writing stories because I imagine there was a Tabitha Cooper, and whatever her name was, she walked the streets of Charleston trying to figure out how to make corn into cornbread to feed children. And so those stories are important to me. And so while I fictionalize characters, I believe the people that I write about could have been real people, were real people, and that they deserve to have stories too. So that's really important to me.
And you mentioned a lot about the, you know, Victoria, talk about you have the historical fiction voice, because I see, like, you know, Rhonda, we had Rhonda at Sumney a couple months ago. Yeah. She's into historical fiction. Vanessa's gotten into historical fiction. I saw Tiffany Warren's coming out with historical fiction, and somebody else I didn't know, like, I just found, like, it's coming out, like, next month. There's going to be a historical fiction book about Bessie Coleman.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so there's a lot of historical, you know, Victoria and Maria are coming here for Moja, right?
No.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes, they are. So right. You have to.
I'll have to come because I haven't seen Victoria. Every time last time she was in Charleston, I was in New Orleans for Essence. Like, I keep missing her.
Yeah. So they're doing a big talk at the Charleston Music Hall for Moja. So
Okay. I'll have to come and see her.
Yeah.
So, you know, the reason that you're seeing a lot of our historical fiction is because publishers are willing to publish it. Okay, so there was like this little period of time, like since forever until recently, that our stories were not stories they wanted to publish. They didn't think that there was a readership. They didn't think that our stories mattered. And now that they realize, like, people want to read stories about Black people in history. Like, they didn't just pop up. We're not contemporary. We've been here, you know. We're not new to this. We're true to this. And so I think that because publishing sees, you know, publishing is a business. And so now that they've recognized, these stories can sell, a lot of us are getting the contract. The contracts are happening. So, because that's how it happens.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's
Whatever
true.
it's going to sell is what we'll publish. So.
Yes. Yeah, it's to the point now. I'm thinking about starting a Black historical fiction book club.
That would be
here
cool.
At DART, because, you know, DART, you know, is, you know, pretty much Black history of Charleston and stuff like that.
It is very much so.
Hopefully I'll get some, you know, interest from that if
that
I were to start
like a
one.
great idea.
Yeah, so thank you. Back to, I just have one more question about the current book, which is about the men that come in, which brings back into the romance. There is a little romance that goes on in this one.
Little bit. No, a little bit, a lot of bit. What's funny is my editor, my recent proposal that she's looking at, I told her, I said, I don't think there's going to be very much, I'm dialing back on the romance. She says, yeah, I'd like to see you do that when you gave 3 women a man in one book. She said, Rhonda, I feel like if there's a man within 50 miles of the women, that they're going to get him. And I said, well, maybe, but I'm going to try, And so the men in this book, I mean, we've got, a hot Gullah chef. We've got another good guy who, a second chances romance. And then we've got Tabitha who, didn't she deserve love?
Yes, she did. Because after
she had a hard time with her.
Yes. After
Yeah.
the guy who has the link to Charleston, I'm trying not to give it away, y'all.
Joseph.
Yeah.
Kind of very hated right now across America, and I made him up. But I think Joseph was probably a real character also.
Yeah, probably was.
The streets,
yeah.
That prowled the streets of Charleston as well.
Yes. Okay.
But I like to write, let me just say this, I really like to write good guys.
Yeah.
I always have.
I can tell.
I'm daddy's girl. And so, and I have 2 sons. I don't have any daughters. And so I know that there are a lot of good men, and I like to write stories about them and have them just show up in ways that the women, I never write stories about women that need to be rescued. Because none of us need to be rescued. Even when we want to be rescued, we don't need to be rescued. And so any man that's in one of my books is always adding to a woman's life. There's a line actually that a reader reminded me of today at the end of the thing about home. Casey says, sort of a spoiler, but she says that she realizes that, and I loved it, she posted it on her Instagram, and I was like, oh, I forgot about that book. Love had one job, and that was to add to the joy I already had. I would never overwork it again. And so, if we can remember that it's not, doesn't have to save you. It can, that it adds to your life. And so I like to write men who add.
Okay.
Even when some others may have subtracted.
Yes, because there was one guy in that book who definitely subtracted. Definitely. So now we're going to go into questions about the writing and publishing, and we kind of touched about it a little bit. You've written and published books, both as an indie author and a big 5 publisher. Can you talk about the difference between the two?
I teach a writing workshop, and I'm teaching it right now with a group of writers, and people are always interested in traditional publishing. The differences are huge. Well, number one, and is one better than the other? I don't necessarily think so. I think that for a writer has to decide what path is best for them. Clearly, having a machine like HarperCollins behind me for these books has been helpful, but I made a decision at the time when I came up with the thing about home that I wanted it to have a larger audience. I wanted it to have further reach. I wanted it to sit in libraries, and I wanted I just wanted it to be more. And as an indie author, to accomplish that, God, you got to work really, really hard. It's hard to get books into bookstores. It's hard to advertising, everything that's involved. But the self-published, I'll call it, book author life, for me was nice. I started off being traditionally published with an imprint that was with Kensington. My first 4 books came out with that imprint. And so I sort of, in a lot of ways, I think, was a little different from the majority of self-published authors in that I brought readers with me. Building from the ground up as a self-published author, I can't imagine. It was just something I never was interested in doing. If I didn't have a book deal, I wasn't going to write books. And so I was very fortunate, but then my imprint went away. And I sort of had decided, well, I'm done with this writing thing. It was kind of cool. I went on a couple of vacations. I'm done with it, And a friend of mine said, no, Rhonda, you're a really good writer. I really need you to write another story. Write something that you love, that makes you happy, that gives you joy. I've been writing pretty serious stories about couples in crisis. And so I wrote this romance novella. I literally wrote it as a challenge in 2 weeks with another author. Got an editor, was horrified to publish it because my readers had been reading very serious books from me. Here I got this little light, breezy romance called Breaking All the Rules. And that, I always say that was the book that saved my writing career, because it sold and sold and sold. I mean, it literally just stopped selling, and it came out in 2013. And when I say just stopped selling, it still sells, you know, but it really, really just sold really well. And I thought, oh, so y'all want romance from me? Okay, I can do this. And so then I wrote another 21 romances. And so, so I liked I liked writing stories and releasing them on my schedule, working with the editors I wanted to work with, marketing as much or as little as I wanted to, not having to really do public events other than things on social media. So it's a different space. Now that I'm back with a traditional publisher, you got to get out there, you know. And I love it. I love meeting with readers. So this is the part that I've always liked, is talking to readers. But figuring out how to use social media, and now that the algorithms have all changed on all the platforms, can be a bit overwhelming. You know, you've got book talks, you know, which sucks up a lot of the energy of, you know, and the capacity of readers on TikTok. And so if you're not a book talk author, like, you're spending time on that platform doing what? And so it gets complicated. But I love the team at HarperCollins. Christian, which is the part of HarperCollins that I'm with, so collaborative and very different from most publishers. And I know this because authors talk. You know, having a say on your cover, having a say on your title, them at least listening. You know, like asking me, giving me a list of narrators and saying, who are you comfortable with for the audiobook? I have an amazing audiobook for this book, by the way, 3 narrators. It is pure art. And them allowing you to be involved in ways that a lot of publishers don't. I have authors who are much, like New York Times bestselling authors, who find out who their narrators are when the book is put up on the platform. Like, they have no say in anything. And so our team is really collaborative, and they've made coming back into being traditionally published really beautiful. And even just asking them, like, you know, can I go here? Can I do this? Can you help me pay for this? Or will you pay for this? Or, you know, can you help me pay for this? And then they pay for it all, you know, like, I don't have to pay my part, you know, like, I like that. That has happened multiple times. So, yes, you have a question.
So I just recently graduated from college with an English degree in communications, and we really talked about, like, AI and writing. Have you had any experience with that recently, with the new technology?
I am familiar with AI, because I have a son in high school and he had to do this whole course about AI. Our publisher, actually, our marketing team actually told us, had a session with us. We have a summit every year where they, marketing, the digital marketing people, the people that buy for the libraries and different things like that, all come together, the editors, and we have this summit that lasts 2 days, and which is also rare, not a thing done in publishing. And so one of the things that we talked about this past April was AI and how to use AI. And we had actually an expert on AI who came and taught us authors ways that we could use AI to make our jobs easier, like doing things like developing social media posts and blogs and things like that. And not to be afraid of it. Certainly you not writing your book with it, but not to be afraid of leveraging the technology in a way that, like, it becomes an assistant for you. And so I haven't done it a lot. I mean, I did, like, shortly after. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And then I forget that I learned how to do it. And I go back to being mad about the fact that I can't get stuff done, you know? And it's like, maybe you should pull out that, you know, video and redo some of that stuff. So I'm familiar with it. There's a lot of angst in creative spaces about AI. With respect to book covers and cover art and graphics, and so it feels like it's real uncomfortable right now, and I'm just sort of watching the conversations and staying out of them and hoping that I can maybe age out before it takes over. It's not like new technology.
Yeah.
We've been using AI. It's just, I think, now we're seeing it in artistic spaces. As a business application, it's been around forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and we appreciate the things in AI that have been around forever that we've been using and not thinking about as AI. I just think it's gotten, in the last couple of years, just dicey with respect to art and literature. And maybe other forms of art that I'm not aware of.
All right, great question. We also talked a little bit about the explosion of African American books, even in the indie and traditional way, and people discovering them via Book Talk, Bookstagram, those things, and now some of those authors is leaning into getting Big 5 deals, or they're getting, and then there's some indie authors who are like, I don't want a Big 5 deal. I never want a Big 5 deal.
They don't want it.
They don't want it. Don't want no parts of it. I'm just going to stay in my indie lane and call it a day.
And they're doing really well in their indie lane.
Yes.
You can do really well in an indie lane,
Yeah.
because,
Yeah, because
I liked being in my indie lane. It was good. It was comfortable there. Like I said, and I'm not saying I won't self-publish books, more romance books in the future, but I got what I wanted. I wanted a larger audience, and I have it, and I'm excited about it. But I have friends that their money runs circles around me. They've learned how to leverage that indie business, and so why would they, change what they're doing?
Right.
So,
okay.
yeah.
And
Except that it gets really exhausting to run, and to be the author and to run a self-published book business. When you get to that place where you're making $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000, $20,000 a month, it is exhausting. And even when they have teams, they're still exhausted. So it's a lot of work. I appreciate having a team behind me doing a lot of things that I can focus on writing and meeting readers.
hi, this is a.
Come on in, have a seat.
Oh, okay.
You may be a future writer.
Hey, that's
I
true.
love it.
Yeah. So, and what do you hope readers take away from your books?
I'm one of those authors who always believes that people will take away what was meant for them. So I never approach my books with, oh, this is the message that I want people to take away in my books. And I'm always really excited. Like today I had this great post on Instagram. I'm like, girl, you know more about this book than I do. Like the way she wrote what the thing about home was about really touched my heart, because I was just like, I had not thought about it in this way. And so I love when readers see things in my story that I did not see, did not intend. But I think with Bitter and Sweet, I think one of the things, I do have a specific theme that I think that I would like for any reader who needs it to take away. And I'll use a little story to preference this. I was at a book signing in Augusta a couple of weeks ago, and a woman walked in and she asked me what the book was about, and I told her Estranged Sisters, and so she says, oh, I'm sold, let me have a copy. And she said, I have 3 sisters and we're not speaking to each other, and maybe I can find something in here. And that was it. And she took the book and went away with it. And then when I was at ALA, I had another woman, the exact same thing. Her and her sisters, somebody suing somebody over property, it's horrible. And she says, maybe there's something in here. And so I think that when I think about Bitter and Sweet and what a journey of healing these sisters went on in this story, I think that the takeaway is that we are strong when we are healed. And we're better together. We get further together than we go alone. And so, if nothing else, I would like readers to take that message away. My entire catalog, there's always a theme of faith and forgiveness. That's just who I am as a writer and what I really believe God has called me to write. I'm probably I'm a bridge author for Thomas Nelson, which is, they have books that are deeply spiritual, like they have Crosses and Fishes, and then they have Bridges, which are the books that are really more mainstream. So if a person is not looking to be preached to or find faith, they're not gonna get that in my book. Nigel don't have no shirt on, honey. I write a sexy book. Okay? He don't never have a shirt on. And so I write a pretty sexy book because that's just how I write. So you're not going to get those overt Christian themes from me.
But there's sex in the Bible.
There sure is, and that's how I feel about it, okay? And so I feel like but I think the idea of forgiveness and faith are universal, regardless. Faith doesn't belong just to Christians. So, so I feel like people get that sense and take those things away from my book. But largely here it's just that, like, if we can move from being stuck, we can perhaps move on to better. Okay. But you gotta be willing to move.
Yep. Yep. What's the next?
What's next? I don't know. I have a contract. I'm at contract. I keep saying that. It's funny because I said it at ALA. Somebody asked me that question. The head of marketing was there. It was great. I had a great experience at the American Library Association. I wanted to be a librarian, but that's another conversation. I always wanted to be. And so I still can be.
You can still, USC has a program online only. You only have to go to Columbia every maybe once or twice a semester.
Okay.
That's how I got my degree.
I'm 58. I'm trying to do about 8 more years of writing and retire. Just garden and visit the Low Country and read books. And so, but when I was at ALA, I'm trying to think what was I going to say. I lost what I was going to say.
You were at ALA and
Your next book.
My next book.
Under contract.
Oh yeah, that's right. So I had a reader who had read The Thing About Home, and a librarian who had read both books. And she said, are you going to continue to write these stories? And she's from North Carolina. She said, are you going to continue to write these Southern books in the Low Country? Because I love them, and I hope you're going to keep doing that. I said, well, I don't know. I'm at contract. We'll see what my publisher says. So the head of marketing was sort of my gopher for the day. I love that. You go and like these big shots are the ones getting your water and making sure you have a good pen and all of that. It's kind of fun. And she said, oh yes, she will be writing these stories. So the answer is another story set in the Low Country. Right now, my proposal is before my editor. This particular book is set in Beaufort. And I might just say, I'm not going to say how, but it's sort of a bookish book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
And no shirts.
Yeah. I'm definitely going to be a man without a shirt.
But then the two guys, the cook and the...
Oh yeah, they had their shirts on. But there might have been a blindfold.
Yeah.
Girl, we took it there.
Okay, all right. Questions? Do y'all have any more questions?
I
No?
thought they were excellent books.
Oh,
I
thank
read
you. You read
The
them.
Thing About Home first, and it blew me away.
Oh,
It blew me away.
thank
So
you.
I was very excited when I went. I was doing something at the downtown library,
Aw.
and I saw the poster, and it had the bitter and sweet cover. So I made sure I got on the reserve list for the library. For that.
Okay,
I
great.
loved them both.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I was telling her this morning, when I first put up the flyer for it here, the book was here, and it's been checked out, I know, at least twice. So that says something. So, yeah. Thank y'all so much for coming today. Copies of Bitter and Sweet can be purchased in the back from Itinerant Literate, who is our partner for today's event. Rhonda will be signing copies of the books and greeting the audience individually. Thank you to Rhonda, Itinerant Literate, the CCPL Communications Department, Alexa Simmons, Roxy Underwood, Zena Harris, Julian Gooding for taping today's event, and the staff here at DART. Thank you so much, and y'all have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you.